Welcome to Transformational Psychology. My name is Ryan Holsapple. I created this podcast because I believe that human beings have the capacity to transform and live deeply meaningful lives. My podcast is based on two pillars: education and transformation. The educational branch allows us to explore the cutting-edge psychology of transformation and many important theoretical ideas. Monologues, interviews with experts, and transformational concepts are presented for the audience to engage with and reflect on. I also believe it is of the utmost importance that people have practical transformational tools for making real-life changes. So this podcast still provides applicable and digestible guidance to complement the theoretical component. It is my hope that this podcast offers education and transformational guidance to a world that is seeking meaning and connection. Today I have for you a podcast with the Resoul Sisters. The Resoul Sisters are a partnership of transformational facilitators that have been trained in Dr. Roger Strachan's self-soul-spirit model. Dr. Strachan joins us today to introduce this beautiful model and to help boost the Resoul Sisters into their wonderful project together, where they will be working with people on transformation through the parts of who they are. Many of you are familiar with Dr. Strachan's model. I have explored it on this podcast. There's several other podcasts online. For those of you who are new, you'll have just enough of an introduction to stay caught up with what we're talking about. Please check our description for information on how to contact the Resoul Sisters. You'll see their website and a phone number because they are working with people and doing a beautiful job. So I hope you enjoy this podcast with the Resoul Sisters, Tanya and Karen, and enjoy the discussion and just allow it to sink into your mind and see what you think and what you feel.
My name is Dr. Roger Strachan, and Ryan and I have done many podcasts together under Sorting Myself Out, under Ryan Holsapple, and I'm assembling now under Roger Strachan. And later through this time, Ryan is going to get me launched on my own podcast as I move into a new section. In 1973, I dropped out because I felt that I had bought the American dream and I was working 90 hours a week, and I thought everything I do I love. I was teaching at university and college. I had a big private practice. I was consulting all around the United States and giving many talks and lectures. But something was missing. I'd started off my career knowing that I had a very strong soul, a life force. The term, when I use it, soul, comes from the Greek's definition, which is the life force, or we call the psyche, ergo psychology, the study of the soul. We've moved away from the original definition significantly, and it's got tied up with spirituality. But the Greeks had another word, and that was spire, for spirit. So soul is our life force. And those of you who have seen some of the other podcasts saw the one in which I benefited greatly from the astronomers who, studying in a nebulae with their scopes, were watching how systems began. And what happens is the gases come together and they form sun, and there we have a star. And then the little bits of matter and little bits of electricity get together. We often call them pixels or little elements. They form, and ergo you have an asteroid, or us, where we're here today on Mother Earth, a planet. Now Mother Earth had to cool down a bit, but deep inside was our beginning. Deep inside, in a molecular form, is many, many years prior to our being here to do this podcast. Millions of years later. So what happens? Well, as the Earth cools down, it's the right distance from the sun, and they're still questioning how water got in our planet. One of the latest is that an asteroid bumped into it and deposited water in our Earth. That's one of the later astronomy thinking. Nonetheless, that water became oceans and rivers, and we then have an atmosphere. Now it's raining. And when all the elements are right, out of that fiery center, these little molecules move out and begin to mutate. The significance of that is that everything is a mutation. I'm working on a paper right now, and I've changed one of the words in it. I started on it 10 years ago, and it goes like this. The universe strives for functionality. I've now added another word that has been validated over and over again in my studies of the last 10 years, and that is the universe strives for intentional functionality. The universe is expanding intentionally. It's not random. It knows where it's going. Does it sometimes come up with things that it doesn't want? Yes. One of the reasons we come to this is last year, through our great telescopes and our scientists, they found a Milky Way was being poked into by another galaxy. What an amazing phenomena. And we realize what has happened is identical to what happens to us. Here's the female chromosome, here's the male chromosome. They cross. That's why we call them X and Y. I'm sorry, men, maleness is only less femaleness, and I know you don't like to hear that, but that is the reality of biology. That's where we get baldness, that's where we get color blindness, from those sweet women that have a recessive gene for each of those decisions, okay, made in our behalf. Bald men don't particularly like that, but there it is. Now, that's what the poking in of the galaxy is. They're exchanging information, even down to the simplicity of our chromosomes. For a while, as I started as a young scientist, we believed that, and this is very poignant today, we believe that a virus found a host, replicated, and mutated under attack. Guess what? 2 years ago, suspicion that many of us had, not me, I'm not in the lab anymore. I've been in applied for 50 some years now. I'm out of the lab. But here's what happens. A virus will mutate just because it wants to. And right now, that is our biggest problem. This is one of the most mutating viruses we've ever had. As a matter of fact, it went to Malaysia as a brand new virus, hit Malaysia, 10 times more deadly than the coronavirus as it started. It is mutating all around. That's why it's going to be hard to get a vaccine, because we may get a vaccine for an old virus that doesn't exist anymore and have to get another one for the new virus. Now, guess what? 5 years ago, we discovered that here are the chromosomes, here are the genes, here's the alleles on top, and here's on top what they're calling, my colleagues are calling, rogue gene, R-O-G-U-E. They mutate for the hell of it. They mutate to try new things, which explains to us in genetics why we get a mutation that's manifested in a new being, and it has no antecedents. So it's brand new. That's why the universe strives for functionality. Now let me give you one classic case. When alcohol came into some of our lives, it was a very delightful thing. And I don't mind sharing my sobriety. Next month on my daughter's birthday, I will have 37 years. And alcoholism has been a big part of my family. Nonetheless, it was a love affair at 18 when I found it. And the thing is that when we first experienced it, it kicked off the dopamines and the wonderful things, and we loved it. Then eventually, as it moved back, it became a depressing thing and quiets down. But as you can see, whatever personality you have, and then you add alcohol to it, some want to fight, some want to dance, some want to, I almost said the bad word, but some want to make love, I'll put it that way, and some want to scream and holler and be wild. Okay, it's all out there. But what it's based on is the alcohol only releases from the frontal lobes what is going on inside anyway. Now, in Siberia, where they're way ahead of us in alcoholism, they've had some recent mutations that are being studied now where you don't develop alcoholism. The most might be a heavy drinker, but you can stop, and you don't go into blackouts. You quit before you want to get into that terrible stage of not knowing where you are. And if we left obesity alone, just on its own, over time the body would say, this isn't working, and would change. If we tried to change it now, some of the best dietitians around who are researching this have given me the data that in some of the populations, it would take 3 to 5 years to switch those genes. So a lot of children come into the world right now with genes devoted to obesity. And unless special things are taken, that's what will develop. So that brings us back to here. When I dropped out, I'd been preparing for this. From the time I was a young scientist, I did not believe in the DSM. I graduated high school 1952. I was off to college, and 1952 is when the DSM, Diagnostical Statistical Manual, came out. And what happened is there were 106 diagnoses. They were all made up. There is no research today that validates the diagnoses. And Tom Insel in 2013 declared that the DSM lacked validity. We still haven't got around to honoring genetics. So the genome came into being in 23. And so we've had it with us now 17 years. The research is amazing. None of my teachers believed in the DSM. They all believed in studying the person as they are. They are who they are, and look and watch and see what you can find out. And we began to realize, I wasn't the first to come up with this, that people have different parts. We call them subpersonalities. Psychosynthesis is another example. Fritz Perls and his students often worked with 2 chairs to have people talk to different parts of themselves. On and it goes. Well, I began writing Self, Soul, Spirit, and I began it. Now, why did I do this? I felt like I had become such a rugged scientist that I understood the genetics, and I understood even though I had no proof of it, I did it by stories of people's lives and inheritability, and trace those lines up, for example, depression here and where it hits here and so forth. Now, that notwithstanding, what the genome discovery has done is to give us actual mapping so that we can go. It won't be long before every child that's born will get a genome. It'll just be part of it, and we know what they'll bring into the world, including disease processes and growth processes and intelligence, etc., etc. Now, I believed in the soul because I started off uncertain as a young man at 18, and I went to a seminary, William Jessup University in San Jose, California at the time. It's moved its location, and studied philosophy and theology. And that life force as well as spirit meant sense to me. The philosophers have been wrestling with the concept of soul for a long, long time. Some have seen it negatively, like Ryle, and that's the ghost in the machine. Today, consciousness and soul work is the most exciting study. There are a number of studies right now that are focusing on being, consciousness, our essence. Those things are so vital in the study. It's interesting, though, that the astronomer gave us the answer pretty quickly, and Mother Earth has a soul. We'll address that later, because right now, poor Mother Earth is being beat up very badly by us, and that's another whole ball game there. I decided what was missing in my work was really focus on the soul. So I dropped out and I took off from 73 until 1979 to chase my soul around in the wilderness, which began then also Wilderness Encounter, a therapeutic journey. So in 73, I created Center for Creative Choice, which studied the self-soul-spirit model. And then in 73, I began taking people in the wilderness to deal with their self-soul-spirit. Very powerful. I figured we ought to go back to our earliest beginnings, and our beginnings aren't in cities. We began in the wilderness and with the creatures, and so I went back there. It's been a great career. In the meantime, I started training, and that brings us to the current. Sitting in front of me are three people, all of which have studied the self-soul-spirit model, and I'll be introducing them very quickly. I have other students that are out there doing it. I'm in the time of turning it over to others. I've reached the grand age of 86 and been able to be doing this now for 60-some years. It's a great privilege. But my biggest privilege is to have young people like this who are, and in the middle people like this, my 49-year-old, and she's my wise woman, by the way. And this is Tanya Miller, who brings into this world a wise woman, and I'll let her tell you about it. And this is Karen Johnson, and she's one of the young ones, 34. And then there's Ryan Holzapfel, just turned 27?
The youngest of them all.
Is that right, 27?
Yeah.
I got it right. Yeah, Ryan had a birthday a while back. Karen has a birthday for 34 on October 14th. Yep. What a memory I've got. Yep. Today, anyway. So at any rate, these three people are saving grace in the sense that they're committed in their work as much to recovering Mother Earth as they are to bringing people in line with their own personal lives. We can't recover Mother Earth, though, until we recover ourselves in a way that we follow the 8th Psalm. What is man that thou art mindful of him, for thou hast put below him all the birds in the air and all the animals in the fields. And that 8th Psalm by Solomon, I'm afraid, is not being lived very well today. But they combine their skills. Tanya has what? How many years as a guide in the wilderness?
20 plus.
20 plus, there you go. That's how she got to be 49. She didn't get there accidentally. Karen has just come off of a wilderness with young people and has done it before, and is being rejuvenated. These two live in Leadville, where you're a high, you have to jump up and down just to get your heart going there so that you can breathe, but not for them and not for me. I've been a mountain climber much of my life and career, and particularly in wilderness. So we share that, and then Ryan as well has shared the wilderness, and he's a top-notch skier as well as loving the wilderness, and grew up around it, and
Yes.
so the four of us have that. What I'm going to do today is to launch these two women first. Now, Ryan and I are wearing his launch shirt because he just launched his business.
Yes.
And this is Treebeard, if you can't see it, from the token.
It's amazing.
So what makes this funny, I took the term Treebeard when I dropped out in 1973 and then moved down to Bisbee in 75 and nobody knew who I was. I was a Tolkien character. But that's all right, everybody in Bisbee, it's what I call the ambulatory schizophrenic capital of the world. They're all just wild down there, and nobody has their own name. There's Walking Bob and Bisbee Bob and this and that, and I was Treebeard. Well, after a while I said, no, I'm Roger, and went back then. So I've been Roger for a while, but I came across this because of John Lynch. John Lynch is another great wilderness guide out of Northern Arizona University and trained in this model, and we'll be doing some of the wilderness trips if I get around to setting up Wilderness Encounter again. Now, I'm going to set up a new website called Self Soul Spirit. I'm a decommissioning center for creative choice. And I want to just go under that because I've moved into the last thing of the spiritual. I'm going to let these two talk, and Ryan and I will interview them on what it is they want to do. So let's begin there. Let's start with you, Tanya, my wild woman. What is it you have that's your wildness on your mandala?
My wood nymph.
Yeah, show them your wood nymph.
Let's see here.
We have our mandalas out here. So
here's my wood nymph.
she's got a wood nymph and I got a wild man. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but there's her wood nymph. And we really resonate together as two wild people. When it gets tough, we go to the wilderness, right?
That's true.
That's right. That's where we find our Circes. And I've been doing it lots and lots of years. There's a funny joke. I want to introduce Tanya to the Grand Canyon a little more than she's seen, and that's going to come up. She and her husband, hopefully we can make a trip soon and I can show them some parts. But I've been in the Grand Canyon 55 times, and my leader, Phil Tosi, who the first take me down when I moved to Prescott, but I'd been down there, that was in 83, but I've been down there in 69, beginning my quest. And the trouble is I never want to come out. I'm always dreaming up these schemes why someone should give me some food off one of the boats, but I haven't worked it out yet. Wouldn't that be great, Tanya? We just hang, they just come by. She'd be hanging out in her aerial hammock, and that's where I'm going to start.
Okay.
Tell us about yourself. Begin right there. Just give us a brief outline of who you are.
Right. Well, I grew up in Vail, Colorado, so in the Central Rocky Mountains, and most of my life has been spent in the woods with my family, hiking and skiing in the winter time. And that love of the outdoors, I really believe, was cultivated at a young age. Only I didn't know it until after college. And I had this opportunity after college to, I went to school in Virginia at James Madison University and studied geology. And as I was looking for a job, I came back out west and was introduced to my first husband, who had a guide company. And unbeknownst to me, I fell in love with nature again and the wilderness, and found that my longing to be in my home place was still very strong, and I didn't know why. And at that point, I found out why. I just love sharing nature with others and feeling that I'm part of something greater than myself, and get that opportunity to talk to the other beings of this planet. So that's where my nature love comes from. And I joined my ex-husband and I for 20 some years of guiding, and have had the joy of taking countless people into the wilderness.
Did that at all lead into the yoga work and work also with the aerial yoga?
So yoga came a little bit later when I was living off the grid. My husband and I lived in a neighborhood of some mining claims, and we had a small community of people that wanted to practice yoga, and the educator and the academic in me said, well, I can't teach you that unless I go to school. so I went and got certified to teach yoga in 2005. And I started teaching yoga in my neighborhood, and we met at the local Nordic Center up on Tennessee Pass. And we met there, I don't know, for a couple of years, and then I eventually started teaching in studios in Vail. And then aerial yoga came as I was taking a sabbatical from guiding. I managed a yoga studio down in Vail, and they were upgrading the club, if you will, and put in a system that could provide for some suspension fitness, and aerial yoga was one of those things that they were able to offer. So it reminded me of the Field of Dreams, and that was that if you build it, they will come.
Good.
And so aerial yoga had never been introduced to our valley, and it's still very small at this point in the
Would
yoga
you give
world.
our viewers the detail of aerial yoga?
Yeah, so aerial yoga is you suspend a piece of fabric from a ceiling or a mobile rig, and you use that fabric similar to a strap or a block or a blanket, where it's a prop to assist you in getting into postures. So whether they're yoga postures or fitness postures, restorative postures, anything that you can think to do with your body, the fabric will support you in movement and functional fitness and therapeutic practice.
Now you use hammocks, right?
Yeah, so the hammock is the fabric. It has a single point at the top. So it's hung at the top and it comes down in a U, and that's what makes it a hammock. So it holds you in the way that your outdoor hammock would between these trees.
And that's a weave rather than a solid blanket.
That's correct. It's a nylon Tecron
Right.
Fabric.
Right.
So they use it in aerial acrobatic
Gotcha.
studios, circus studios, but it's a low stretch fabric, so there's not a whole lot of buoying to it. You're kind of on the ground, and it gives you freedom of movement, but you're not bouncing up and down out of that fabric.
Right.
So, but yeah.
And go on. And what other things? You're interested in photography.
I know. There's so much.
I want our viewers to know that when you get launched, they can come to see you for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
How about ping pong? Is that in there?
No, ping pong is not. Ping pong is not. But when I was transitioning in my guiding career, I really felt strongly about how we connect to nature and how we build that connection in our everyday lives. And it was enough for me to go out and enjoy beautiful scenes and to have those moments of going to lakes and encouraging people to get places that they never
By
thought
the way,
they'd
I got
go
to interrupt.
before.
She's a little
Yeah.
humble. She's an excellent photographer. And
Well,
much of her
really?
thesis is devoted to photography.
Right. So
She's just acting like she's a little one of us amateurs, but it ain't so. Let's get to the real truth.
Well, the photography came because I went back to school.
I know, but you're good at what you do.
I went back to school, and I because I love being outdoors. I wanted a thesis that was different.
You got it.
And
It's
so,
a beautiful thesis.
So I thought, well, if I could combine my love of the outdoors with my academic process and my love of photography, that would be ideal.
Mm-hmm.
So that indeed is what I did. I picked a thesis where photography was the medium by which I communicated with the earth, and the earth communicated with me. And we did it through contemplative photography, which is
Right.
creating a state of being.
Right.
And so it's not so much about discovering a beautiful landscape as it is about who are we becoming in that
Beautiful.
landscape, and what kind of communication is the earth
Right.
having with us as we're in that space. And the camera becomes the translator between the messaging of the earth and what I might receive
Right,
as
right,
someone
exactly.
in it. And so the contemplative photography for me is about transforming ordinary life into the extraordinary.
Right.
So I take photos of faucets and chairs and things that I find in my everyday world.
Right.
And it
That's
invites
incredible.
us to see things as they are. I think one of the most beautiful gifts I could give myself is for me to see myself as who I am.
Yes.
Which
And
is a amazing
Yeah,
parallel to the self-soul-spirit model,
Absolutely.
very much so.
which is about noticing who you are, and the
Exactly.
transformation is about getting into who you are.
Right.
So I'm curious, what led you from being an explorer and a guide of nature and helping other people explore to a transformational facilitator?
Good question.
Right. I had the opportunity to attend the Wilderness Therapy Symposium that was hosted by Naropa University in Boulder a number of years ago, and I came into contact with a number of Vision Quest guides and other individuals that really were deeply rooted in the eco-philosophies and ecotherapy and seeing wilderness as this lifeblood to who and what we're about. And so for me, the transformation came about in that I no longer stuck to the nomenclature of flowers and trees and birds, but actually witnessed my world in a more sensual way, you know, to tap into that. And I feel for myself that it's great to be out in nature, but to have that conversation means so much more. And that leads me to this work in the sense that if I believe I have a soul, which I do, and I'm connected to the soul of the earth and the soul of the universe, and then am I part of something greater than myself? And what would it be to have that everyday connection?
Wow.
And so much of my work and how I've lived in the last 10 to 15 years have really been more about cultivating a state of being and building relationship.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've obviously been involved in a lot of people's theses and doctorates, and it brings me to something that I regret about academia, and that is we don't allow the thesis or master's level or even PhD doctorate to put forward their own ideas. I would have loved that you had the opportunity to do what you're doing right now in your thesis, but you have to stay within the boring academic referring to other people's work.
Right.
And that's the sad thing. Though I have fought for many doctoral and master's students to be able to get some of their things said. And I say that in the light of bringing that to you, and that I would have loved to have been your supervisor, because I would have encouraged you to bring out what you're bringing out right now in your very thesis. So here's a challenge for you. I've read your thesis. I love it. It's filled with magnificent things. Take your thesis and put into it now. Take some of the points in your thesis and write a post-thesis article, including what you just shared with us. Would you consider that as an
I would
assignment?
love that. I would love that.
Yeah, and then you get to post it on your own website.
Right. I tried to push the membrane of academia as much as I could.
I know you did. I saw it in there. Yeah. Well, at
I
any
love
rate, that's not allowed to be done sometimes.
So you were exposed to wilderness therapy. You were exposed to the ideas of transformation, and somehow you ran into this guy, who's kind of at the source of a lot of this stuff.
Right.
I don't know if you share that in common, but what I found is a lot of my mentors were mentored by Roger.
Right.
How did you meet Roger and go to the next level of learning and transformation for yourself?
Right. Well, I feel that Roger, you and I have most likely crossed paths
We did,
at
because I did
Wilderness
teach at
Therapy.
symposium.
Okay, got it.
And so, yes, I will also say that some of my most dearest friends and people that I love that are in this world actually have a relationship with Roger.
Exactly,
Unbeknownst to me. I mean,
Right.
it's not that we had that conversation
Right.
and we're now arriving at this place of, oh, don't you know so-and-so?
Right.
I had met all of these people through Wilderness Therapy Symposium, actually, and through some other family members, Prescott College, and some
Right.
other connections that way. How I actually physically, though, got to meet Roger actually leads us to Karen's story.
Right.
Cool.
Because Karen and I met at a yoga studio that I teach in Leadville, and we have been developing a relationship. And Karen and myself started talking about some things. And one day we were out on the mineral belt walking, and Karen said something to the effect of, well, Roger invited me to come train with him and study with him. Would you want to do it with me? And I had all along this sense that I think I need to meet Roger. And so I actually initiated the call to Roger via Karen. But how we actually came together was Karen and I coming together in Roger's space. And
Amazing.
so that's how we've arrived here in this location.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So a lot of 15 years or more in the making. I didn't really cross paths with you in my academic work.
No, I don't know
yeah.
how that we missed that, because I was
Yeah.
adjunct
Yeah.
faculty at Prescott College as well.
Right.
Earlier period than yours.
Yeah.
But some of the link goes back to Bill Plotkin.
Yeah.
Adams
Very
Valley.
much so. Mhm.
And Jessica Zeller, who's I met in 1980, is sharing the same kind of wise woman that you are, and she's not sure she's ready to turn herself loose yet, but Jessica, that's for your benefit when you watch this. And a beautiful, wise woman.
Yeah. Lovely.
Yeah,
Love
just
her. Yes.
tremendous power, and has really served the community well. She started as a psychotherapist herself, and that's what she was doing when I met her. But she's also into drama, and I've been after Jessica to do. I love drama, and with Little Theater in Sedona, and there's 3 one-act plays based on I Can't Hear You when the water's running, and there's I'm Herbert, and it's 2 old people, and they've been married 3 or 4 times, and now they're in their senility, and they mix up their former spouses when they talk to each other, and I keep yelling out, "But I'm Herbert!" So Jessica, that's another thing. Let's do that before we die. At any rate, let me tell you the meaning of this, really, because this is hallmark to what is going to go on from here on in. What I didn't like when I first began was the power over model in psychotherapy. And that power over model in psychotherapy, in psychology, and both psychiatry, moved to ridiculous levels. It was already being practiced when I visited state hospitals, where they no longer treated people as people, but as cases. And they called it managing cases. And they doped them up with Thorazine and Stelazine, and many of you, I'm sure, have seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. If you haven't, why, it's a must. I didn't see treatment going on. I saw zoning out and medicating them out. Well, we've come to the level here just a year or so ago. A mother in Michigan refused to give an anti-psychotic drug to her 13-year-old daughter. And it escalated, and I'll quickly get to the end of the story. The Detroit sent out a SWAT team to take a daughter away, and because a SWAT team in a tank came to this mother's house. Well, that just so went crazy in Michigan, and they changed the law that no one can tell a mother to give their child a medication. Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing.
So that's where we are. More about that later, but right now, but the point I'm trying to make is that we don't do power over. We do power with. I say that in a funny way, too. All my career, you couldn't sue me because you do all the work. You'd have to sue yourself. If you didn't like the outcome, you'd have to sue the parts of yourself, because all I'm doing is facilitating those parts talking to each other and coming to
I love that.
conclusions. So I use that as a joke. But On that note, that's what's really key here. That's why we call ourselves facilitators.
I love it.
We don't use the word coach either, because coach still has that power over. I mean, I played a lot of athletics, and I never looked at my coach as an equal. That's not what, he told me what to do, and I went in and did it. And I never said, well, coach, let me tell you how we ought to run this.
Right. And that's one of the things I've learned from you, Raj, is the language we use matters.
The language you use matters.
And it's not always a rose is a rose by any name. Sometimes it does really matter what we call things. And that's been a big piece of our training is paying close attention to language and how we frame things.
Right.
That's also why we don't like the psychopathological diagnoses, because give them the name and they'll play the game.
They play the game.
Yeah. Back to starting with Karen.
We're ready. Do you have any more? We're going to come back to you a number of times, but
no, I think
introduction.
I think leading into
I think people will know
how we met
you
at the yoga studio, and then Karen giving a bit of your background.
All right. Yeah, so I grew up very much immersed in the wilderness. When I was 6, I went trekking in the Himalayas. So wilderness has been a common theme throughout my life. And I even so much loved it that in college I studied outdoor education. And so that's where a lot of my wilderness guiding came into play, was during those years. And then after college, I went and studied spirituality for a little bit more, because that's a big part of just who I am, my soul, my connection to spirit. And so did that for a while. And then I went to grad school for education and went into more like an indoor education pathway, taught 4th grade for a bit after that. And then I ran after school programs for the school district I was working with. And so that kind of brought a lot of like the education piece, the teaching piece. We did wilderness programs with the youth and the students. And so yeah, like a lot of common threads of teaching, wilderness, youth, and spirituality, which is a lot of common themes I really relate with Roger too. So that's a little bit of my career background. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else I would add on to that.
Tell us about you, though. Who are you, and what are you, and what do you want to do in this world?
Yeah, so I've always been drawn to working with people like just on a deeper level. I loved what drew me to wilderness guiding was the way that wilderness really brings this platform of transformation. You're immersed in this world where you're not in control. You're like in the elements, you might be uncomfortable, and just seeing the ways people would change or look at something different, or maybe like past hurt would come up. And we got to like support and facilitate space for those things. And so, yeah.
And what do you want to do?
So
how do you want to manifest?
Yeah, I think that it could lead to, so Tanya and she shared a little bit of our story, how we met, which leads to, Tanya and I really deepened our relationship when we did a deep nature fast together. Mm-hmm. And that was last summer, so like a year and a couple months ago. And that's when I originally met Roger, was preparing for this deep nature fast, making my mandala, really understanding like just who I am on a deeper level, and then going out into the woods for 4 days by myself, just me and nature, and really sitting with the parts of who I am. And Tanya was one of the facilitators for that nature fast. And so that really deepened our connection and deepened this space of what Tanya and I both want to co-create and bring into the world. And fast forward a year to the day is when Tanya and I decided we wanted to come together as business partners and sisters and start what is called the Resoul Sisters.
Say that again.
The Resoul Sisters.
Yeah, but say it out loud in a way that you're going to hear that. Spell it.
Oh. Resoul.
Right.
Yeah. Sisters.
That's beautiful,
Love it.
isn't it?
Yeah.
I love
Resoul.
Got it.
I love it.
Not as in the sole on
Not
your
as
foot,
in the shoe.
Your soul.
All right.
but as in your
But in your
life
being,
force
right.
soul.
Yeah.
Yes.
Isn't
Yeah.
that beautiful name they came up with?
It's
Resoul
beautiful on
Sisters.
multiple levels. The
Oh,
one
and
that-
it's so tantamount to importance right now.
Yes.
This pandemic, right in the middle of women really merging forward. If you go over the last number of years, women have really began to push what we started in the 60s, and now it is really women aren't going backwards anymore. They're not going to take it, and I don't blame them. I've always told my daughters and my granddaughters, and now I'm telling my great-granddaughters, you can be anything you have the capacity to do, and whatever skills and talents are in your being, and you go forward and master those, and then you manifest those. And I wasn't joking when I said maleness is only less femaleness. So we're trying to catch up, ladies. But and by the way, interestingly enough, I'll speak for my scientists for a moment. The Y chromosome, for whatever reason, is making more mutations and changes than any other the chromosomes. Is that an amazing
It's
phenomenon?
amazing.
Is that amazing?
Yeah.
Us men are trying to catch up to these women. Now, you got the Resoul Sisters,
Yep.
and what do you want to do with it? Just you, right? Your part, right? We'll get back to Tanya in a minute. What is it, a platform for you? So before we talk about programs you offer, well, what is your heart? For example, I've moved into the spiritual with self, soul, spirit, and I'm going to concentrate on spirituality now, my part. So what do you want to concentrate on? And
Yeah, I think I want to concentrate on both the soul part, but also the spirit part. So
Okay.
the soul part to me would be really creating space for people to, we say, transform through transitions they're going through in their life. Whether that be like shifting perspectives or maybe a bigger transition like going through a relationship change or moving careers or changing locations, things like that, but really providing the space for people to come and have clarity about what does that mean for them and who's speaking from their mandala. Is their soul the one directing that decision? Is it maybe someone else? And really providing space for them to explore what that means to them.
Amazing. I love it.
Karen,
So-
I think you should talk about the spirit too, because I know that's a really big aspect of your
I was
life.
going to ask the same question.
yeah, I was too, but I thought I'd wait for the first of you guys.
we are all asking the same question.
How did you get here on Earth?
I don't know.
What did you bring in your mandala?
No, I do know. Yeah, so I have a part in my mandala, I call her Bestowa, and she really is the part that is connected between this seen world and this unseen world that really, to me, feels like a similar space, but often we like make a distinction between the two, or it could feel different. And Bestowa in my mandala, she just would spend all her time in the spirit world of like connecting to something bigger than herself, and we all have different names for what that could be. I know Roger calls his connection the Black Goddess.
Yes, my
And-
higher powers.
Yeah.
Being a biologist, why, and since the black woman is the first the apes throw, that's as far back as I get.
Yeah.
So I call her the Black Goddess. But I took her on when I decided to really reconnect with my soul. As a scientist, I'd moved away, and that was a reason to reconnect. And the minute I dropped out, I said, I need a higher power. So now back to you. That's how it came.
Yeah, and I think To me, I really believe in there's as many gods as there are humans. Like, it's just the expression can look different. It can feel like earth to someone, or it can feel like, to me currently, it's this grandmother energy. And that's what I need in my life right now, or the type of connection I really am drawing just life from. But I also feel a deep connection with Jesus, and like that's a big part of my background and roots is Christianity. And just exploring what that looks like. And so I, going back to Resoul Sisters, would love to provide space for people to explore that connection in their own life. Not that, to say, like Tanya and I would never say, you have to have a connection to spirit or believe in spirit. But if they do and they want to explore that and deepen that connection, I personally would love to be part of that facilitation.
That's amazing. And I hear two things in that. One is, I support whatever your higher power is, and I want you to find it. And two is, we push no dogma, we push individual, independent self-discovery of spirituality. Did I get that right?
Totally. Yep.
I love that.
I think Tanya would agree.
Well said.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah, I do
Well,
too.
that's what's so important. You might not know, I've been sober for 10 years now.
Wow.
And I had to wrestle with my own spirituality and find a higher power in myself that could help me manage my addictive personality. And
Got one of those too.
yeah, so I had to learn how to redirect my addict with different spiritual practices and relationship with my own higher power. And now Roger's helping me figure out exactly what my higher power is,
Right.
because it's changed.
That's
And
cool.
Right.
it's still evolving. So
awesome.
I'm doing soul work, and I'm flirting with spirituality. So I'm right behind you, but I'm gonna hang out here in the soul for a little bit.
Right. Right.
Gonna bounce.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
Karen is one of 6 people, and they've all been women, that I've had the pleasure over 65 years of being involved. Some people come in with connections out of the universe, and we often call them guardian angels, or we call them our higher power, with lots of different names. But sharing with you and what we've talked about, Tanya and I also have our academic background for it. It turns out that physics has declared now there's no such thing as space, and we're all connected. And the Buddhists have been saying it, that we're all connected for a long time. I, as a scientist, say, yes, we are, but we have our individual bodies. I don't know why whoever created all this, what energy field, we have uniqueness. Everything that has a body is unique. There are no two things alike, not even identical twins, we now know. So in that sense, we all are unique, and we're all connected. And what that means is certain people like Karen have wavelengths that some of us don't have. And almost all of the wavelengths that I've studied with the 6 people that I've known, the one common denominator and the one universal moral, I don't know of any other universal moral, it's love. And these are the love angels that come into life and love everybody. And Karen, I'm going to do this because this is really tough. Of my others, they have a trouble hearing people because they can't stop what comes inside. They take their pain in. And you and I had a really long session a while back around, can you leave it out here? Can you hear people's pain, love them, and still not take on their stuff?
I do think I could do that.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's been the trouble with some of the other angels. They get overwhelmed. I I do have one in close vicinity. She does it individually without having a private practice. She just finds her people that are struggling with their spiritual life and enters in and becomes a part of their life. And so I don't know how it'll happen for you, but welcome to the group of bestowers.
Yay!
Yeah, bestowing love on others, and that's a very powerful. Do you believe you have a calling?
I do. Yeah.
See, I do too. I believe my calling is not. Mine's to be a trickster and a troublemaker, and a stirrer-upper. So that's what I do well: stir people up so they look at their lives. I think you come in with a different phenomena, and how will you work? Tell me how you're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it feels really simple. Like creating, maybe not creating. One of the things I'm most passionate about is hearing this voice of love, whether that's literally or this sensation in your body, or it's this just knowing that like you're gonna be okay. And like whatever you're going through, if it's grief or deep pain or loss or opposite, like joy and pleasure, like you're held by this like this universal force of love. And so for me, this calling feels as simple as helping people connect to that love, like this almost like plugging into a power socket. Like it's there, it's
Right.
available, and I think so many things keep us away from it, like busyness or feeling the need to be productive or these things we believe about ourselves that are just not true. And like I just fundamentally believe the essence of this universe is love.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And so the mandala work becomes a vehicle for exploring the voice of love. Is that right?
Totally.
Wow. Well,
Love
what?
it. Good job, Red.
Hey, let's go with a real thing. You just came off of working with rasty little boys
Yep.
in an after-school program, right?
Yes.
And,
All the
was
ones
it-
that are flunking school.
Yeah. Tell the story and how well you did with these
Oh.
ornery little boys. What were their ages?
Well, most of my time, I ran the whole K through 12 after school programs, but my actual time during after school hours were with 7th through 12th graders.
7th through 12th grade.
Yeah, and so a lot of the students that came to our tutoring center were students that either got held back or were flunked or just like were sent there because they just
Like me.
need extra support. Yeah.
Troublemakers.
But oftentimes the students would come to the center and they would just talk to me about their lives. And
Right.
that's what I didn't let them do, but that's what I wanted for them, was a space for them to feel heard and seen and supported for who they are, because that's like fundamental and foundational before you can even work on the next set of like getting a B in math and passing. So they would come and just talk to me, and I felt like it was this love work, but in a different format, a different venue, a school district. So.
What they used to do with us is put us in the hallway. How about you,
Yep.
Ryan? Did you spend much time in the hallway or kicked
gosh.
out of school? Or,
Yeah, all sorts of suspensions.
yeah, you got
Out in
to
the hallway.
Right.
Oh man.
I watched a whole section of a school being built one year when I'd be described as oppositional defiant behavior.
Yep.
Yes.
That's the latest.
They gave me that disorder too.
See, they just called me a bad boy. So.
Oh my God.
The thing is that you had to appeal and get by their bad boyness, because I know I was a bad boy, but I loved it. To tell you the truth, it wasn't like it was something I didn't like, and it wasn't like it was an epithet. It was a profession. And it's just gone into being a trickster, but they don't like it when you disturb the classroom.
Right. Well, it's like on one hand, Raj, stop making trouble so we can teach class, and it's
Right.
like, Stop teaching class so I can make trouble.
That sounds like it fits you better than it fits me. I'm going to Freud right now and say that's a projection.
That's exactly how it was for me.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
That's exactly how it was.
Well, mine was
was
I
it
would
for
get
you?
the work done, and then I'd be sitting there idle and thinking around. So that's when the spitballs started, or that's
I
when.
love it. I love
Yeah. So how did you do? How did you do with guys like us? What did you do to win them over?
It felt like a love-hate relationship sometimes.
Some did it.
No, but there's always this switch midway through the year where a lot of them did want to turn it around and and work harder.
How did you touch them? What did you do that made the difference? Because this is going to be real important, because you might have a few oppositional types, as they call them,
I've
come
had a
to
lot
see
of
you.
them as a teacher.
I bet you did.
I think
How did they end up loving you?
going back to what I just shared, like letting them be who they are and then supporting that in a way that could work in the classroom.
Wow.
So sometimes that means they would need to go and jump on a bouncy ball in the hallway and then come back in the room, or simple things. I had lots of different corners in my classroom. I had a chillax corner where they had pillows and could just rest, or they had permission to be them. I think that's the biggest way to say it. And then
But what led them to liking you rather than just only liking themselves? I see you were successful, that by being heard and being understood, they begin to give away some of the ornery behavior and didn't direct it towards you. But what about the next step? What about, how did they come to really care for you? What is it that you offered that, how did that happen?
I would also say believing in them, telling them some of these messages they were living in weren't true.
Okay, so you challenged the messages that were derogatory or negative
Yeah.
or not self-fulfilling, and help them. Did you actually help them find then messages they could take to their soul and take to their brain, and
I mean, one obvious one is a lot of the times the behaviors come from this place of lack. I'm not enough. I can't do well in this classroom. I feel silly, so I'm just gonna act out so I can't be caught in my stupidness. So simply telling them that's not actually who you are. You are brilliant. Let's find the ways you are brilliant. Maybe it isn't reading and writing. That's okay. We'll work with that. But you have something unique to you.
okay. Well, the reason I pushed you there, because I think people need to see that aversive treatment is going to bring out more anger and hostility and aversive back.
Yes.
Mhm.
I mean, bully beget bullying. And I have shared some of those same kinds of things. And you've heard a couple of the stories when I was a school psychologist
Yep.
of doing exactly what you do. And so I attest that when you hear and when you understand and when you help them with their own dialogue and reframing, changes can be made.
Mhm.
I wish I would have had someone like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and making it giving them steps for who they are. I felt and I taught several reading intervention classes for students that were 3 to 4 grade levels behind. I didn't hold this bar up here, you got to get back to grade level. That was my bar. I never told that to them. But doing increments of steps, and they would, once they were successful with this step, they would get extra motivated for the next step.
Exactly right.
And it was so fun to watch.
Right.
Right. The
Yeah.
other piece too is honoring people for who they are.
Mhm.
Like you said,
Exactly.
Pablo Picasso said, "I don't develop, I am."
Yeah.
And we have so many developmental expectations and values that we don't actually see the uniqueness in the classroom. We see, are you fitting into the developmental expectation or not? If you
Right.
are, you get a good pat on the head
get a
and
gold
everything's
star.
okay. And if you're not, then you'll be treated differently. So I think that's just amazing that you were able to show up for those people.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And isn't that what I mean? That's what I want in my life, is to be
Exactly.
seen for who I am.
Right.
And I feel that that's where the self soul spirit model resonates for me, is that it acknowledges us for who we are,
All the parts, every bit.
and what we're about.
Right.
And I feel that that's where Karen and I want to spend our time, creating containers to hold that space
Yes.
for
Right.
others.
Right.
Which brings us into Resoul Sisters.
Resoul
And you're
Sisters.
doing it together.
We are.
Why together instead of differently? Tell me what brought
Good
you
question.
Yeah.
Why are you forming a union?
Do you want to answer that one, Tanya?
I
want both of you to.
Yeah,
Okay.
we could both speak to it.
Go ahead, Tanya.
Well, we believe 2 is better than 1, for sure. And really feeling that if we were to take a departure from that traditional model of hierarchy, to say that in this work you've got to have the coach or the teacher, the therapist that actually knows what they're speaking about, and then you have the client, and it's like the power over model isn't really the one that we want to step into.
Right.
So we feel really resonant that the 2 of us bring our different backgrounds, we bring our uniqueness together in relationship to a 3rd or a 4th or a 5th,
And
it
even the
becomes
age difference.
It becomes a circle. Yeah, there's
You each bring a different element of your being
Right.
49 and you're 34, and bridging that phenomena.
I love that.
I'd like to weigh in for 1 second.
yeah.
As their teacher. I've never seen a twosome. I've worked a lot. A quick example is I never saw married couples alone. I always saw it with my partner, and it turned out in the last 40 years I had 2 partners, and they were in the therapy with me. So there was always a male and female in the room with the couple. It wasn't just one male. But what I want to say about the both of you and watching you work, you do not step on each other's toes.
Right.
They blend together so seamlessly.
Wow.
It's amazing. And so who do you want to see? What kind
Well,
of people?
I want Karen. Do you
Yeah,
have
I want
anything
Karen
else
to
to
weigh-
say
that's
about
that's
us
the
work?
question
I mean,
for both of you.
we've been conscious about wanting to work with people together. So that
Right.
that actually is the model that we are providing. Is that you can choose to work with one of us. However, we're starting. You get both of us,
Amazing.
and to bring our mandalas and our voices in conjunction with the people that we are working with,
Right.
their voices, for me feels like a greater circle. And I don't know if you'd
I
have
love
anything
that.
to share in addition to that, Karen.
I'm sure. I think you said it great. The people that Tanya and I have worked with, like, I think they really have enjoyed that dynamic, because one of our friends that we've worked with, the traditional counseling, you're over there, I'm over here, like, it just didn't work for her. But this, like, more of a community setting of, like, we're in this together, like, we're all humans together, like, we're really providing this space of, like, coming into this sisterhood, whether you're a man or a
Amazing.
woman, but, like, community being so important and key and foundation to what we want to start as the Resoul Sisters.
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
Well, you do both.
We
Yeah.
will do
You also-
both.
So you'll
Yeah.
see individual, you'll see
Yep.
individual. What would make you decide to do it collectively, other than a group?
Well, we've decided that collectively in finding out your mandala, that we will actually do it together. And then once your mandala has been established and you're familiar with your mandala, then there is the option to work with us individually.
Or together?
Or keep working with us.
Yeah,
together.
or keep working together. Yeah.
Or swapping back and forth.
Or
Completely.
I
mean,
love it.
there's something beautiful about having this initial process together.
Yeah.
Right.
Where there are more
Right,
voices,
right,
more feedback, places
Right.
for feedback and for energy to
Right.
occur,
Yes.
and that can continue, and there is also that option of the one-on-one. But we really feel that there's more of a collaborative process with the two of us initially.
Wow.
Now, we've centered it around women, but do you want to see men too?
Of course.
Okay.
Well,
So
Don't
the same
you?
principle.
I love men.
I know you do. So you've shared that with Tanya and I many times, and you love working with them, and you've done well working with them.
Well, and I will also say from my experience that I studied energy medicine,
Right.
and some of my tutelage and also spaces I've really grown have been in the company of others. So whether you identify as a man or you identify as a woman or you have some other identification, I think diversity there is I can only grow in that diversity. And it's great if I do it alone and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go with myself, my
Right,
mandala,
right.
and do my parts, and that's great. I also know that I flourish to my highest potential in the company of others. And so the more diversity there, I think brings just a greater conversation out into the world, and I feel that that's a very fulfilling way to experience it.
So on that note,
yeah,
that both of you have worked together, and going with what Ryan was just celebrating, what's the success of that?
the success of
You've had 3 or
Sisters.
4 people
Yeah.
that you've worked together,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how has that gone? What's the feedback they give you by having both of you in a session?
One of the most fascinating things I've witnessed so far is like when Tanya and I have gone and worked with people, one in particular, it's become less and less about answers and more about asking better questions. And I just been blown away the depth of like this one person we've been working with started in this place of like not in a bad way, but like having this like, I don't know how to connect to my soul. Like I have a soul, but I don't know what my soul's saying because I've never listened, or I've never had that experience of asking. And so, but to go from there to like questions like, what's the purpose of life? And like, why am I here? And I know Roger and we've talked about this, but like asking these deeper questions and not even necessarily needing the answers as part of the transformation
Just part of the process.
Yeah.
Right, gotcha.
I love it.
And I think that's come out of the fact that Tanya and I just bring such different backgrounds. And so anytime we get together, it's a lot of just laying questions out on the table and not necessarily being like, let's figure out your job that you're going to do next. You know, like it's just become not about that.
Right. So what kind of groups are you going to invite? Start with you. Did you have, Karen, what kind of groups do you want to see? Then we'll go back to Tanya, get her input.
Like
too.
what type of people
If
we want to work
like
with?
the two of you are going to offer a weekend group, and maybe you're going to have 10 people or 20 people come. What are they going? What's the theme going to be, or what are you going to do, or have you worked on that at all?
I would say we have. Initially, we want to do workshops on like creating your mandala, getting to know yourself. And Tanya and I actually have led a workshop like that, and we got great feedback from the people that came. And that really was like a 3-part process, was explaining this theory, then creating the mandala, and then working with it in a little capacity. So that's one way.
So it's like an introductory exploration
Gotcha.
of yourself and your
Right.
soul,
I'm good.
Yep.
and maybe even your spiritual connection.
Yeah, I don't know if we touched on spirit in that one, but I personally would love to do workshops focused on that part of the theory. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to, in my mind, it's starting here,
Yes.
right? If we're engaging in this discussion around our soul and our parts, starting with the mandala, in the way that we have started with the mandala,
right.
is a great place to initiate these deeper conversations.
Absolutely.
And then where those conversations lead will go into a myriad of places. And so I think themes, anything from how are we building relationships in our everyday life? Are we living the life that we want to live? Are we becoming the truest self that we can imagine?
Yes.
For our life and how we interact in it, that the themes in my mind are going to be driven by the people that show up in the circles and show up in the workshops to say that we want to hear about other people's voices and how we want to live and how we want to live collaboratively.
Wonderful.
Amazing.
So the structure of that is one-on-one private sessions, which
Yes.
really it's more two with one initially, but also workshops that focus on the introduction of the mandala, but then will lead to some other developing workshops. I know as a yoga instructor and a teacher trainer, I'm always about, okay, well, we could all get trained to become teachers, but that isn't really the path for development for everyone. So it's really more about this idea of how do we continue to bring actionable ways of engaging our mandala to our life, and how do we do that in community? And that's where those workshops will show up. And then Karen and I have talked often about wanting to have some both local and I think global, now because of where we are culturally and in our world situation, online circles of people. And so Karen, you could probably share a little bit more about the circles and what your thoughts are on that.
Our original circle, Tanya and I talked about starting basically was like pillars of living soul directed life. Like what type of pillars do we need in our lives so we can hear our soul if we believe we have one. And so like taking time to really bring in different exercises or homework or play or teachings, sharing in community in a circle that explores that would be one of the circles we would love to offer.
Wonderful.
Yeah. We've looked at some of the workshops too of I try to push the membranes a little bit, and I know that in learning the mandala, for me to bring that clarity around the different parts has really been very formative. And so if I can speak from my parts and understand my parts and how they direct and how they relate to the soul, then I find that I'm able to navigate my life a little differently. So so we're going to be bringing in some arts-based experiences and kind of some mood board type, probably those graphic designers or website people out there will recognize, how do these parts of us feel, and what would we use in the way of imagery and textures and colors and so there's a whole exploratory process in just the mandala alone, and then magnify that with your everyday world of, gosh, I'm trying to make a decision about a transition that I'm making in life, and whether it's a transition that is something that happens in a daily way, or if it's a bigger one that I'm going to move across country, or I'm thinking of choosing a different career path, or something that actually changes our whole way of looking at the world and viewing things differently. But there's just this whole other way of getting out there and exploring. And I would say that Karen and I's wilderness background and love of other modalities will only enhance the kind of ways that we go about this discussion.
So let me review this much. What I hear in there is doing the mandala and seeing where it goes. Just see what themes develop out of it, and have them come in a group. What I hear is transformational. What I hear is soul and spiritual combined. What I hear that I introduced, and let me ask if this follows. Both men and women need to be empowered now. Men are actually less empowered right now than women. In studying the millennials, we got a whole group of men that are working at restaurants and drinking too much, and it's not. And women are leading in going to college and in medical school and law school. There's more women than men, and 90% of the people going in for a PhD in clinical work in my field are women.
Yes.
Men aren't entering the field
They're
anymore.
a lot of them are having a hard time finding purpose.
Yes. So do you see yourselves offering groups and individually empowering men and women?
Yeah.
Very much so.
Okay. And last of all, I love this part, a great diversity in bringing in people to expand on their artistic skills.
I love that.
I really did that early in my practice. I've worked with a lot of artists who got stuck, as they called it, to reopen their energy and enthusiasm and creativity. It was a wonderful thing to do, to get into their mandala and see where they might be blocking or slowing it down or interfering with creativity, and to watch them. So, but again, it's always about stirring them to become.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. They're still doing the work.
Yeah.
You know, we're really here to create that container.
So are you going to open up soon?
We are open.
You're open.
We are open.
Yeah, you got a phone number and those that you'll put on this podcast
Yes.
later?
We will.
So everything is going to be in the description, website, phone number, so you can find the Resoul Sisters if you so desire. So,
Right. Today we just wanted to introduce them to you and listen to their enthusiasm. I have a bias. We did the best we could in the 60s to bring back love and meaning, and what if they gave a war and no one showed up, and we did our best to open up for equality with women. Though I personally simply grew up that way. I've always believed that women should be treated with equality, and practice that in my own marriage and with my family and my children. So the key is that's back again. We went back underground, and here we are having to find some fighting issues for women's rights and color rights in terms of your diversity, and we're back with racism and discrimination having a heavy. And I really laud the two of you because I see the way you've empowered yourselves and the way you've taken to your own personal mandalas. And obviously this applies to you. I've said it about you many times. You're a young rock star of facilitation and way ahead of your time. And you ladies are a blessing to me, and I wish you the very best as you launch yourself.
Thanks,
you.
Roger.
Okay.
I'm tempted to sign up. I'm not kidding.
Yay!
I'm not kidding.
I know you're not. Who
I'm
would be?
looking for a good therapist.
Come be with us.
The proof is in the pudding. There it is, folks. Thank you very much. Any last thing anybody wants to add?
That sounds great.
All of what we shared is on our website.
Yes.
Because I feel like we did share quite a bit, but
Right,
it's all
now you're
on
going to
our
be able to
website.
share an actual podcast
Yeah.
of your website
Yeah.
on your website.
Cool.
Well,
But
thank
we're going
you,
to get to share it to the
thank you very
general
much.
audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for doing this. This is great.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
Megan,
you.
for having
Yes,
us.
Yeah.
thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right.
Cool.